Welcome everyone to another live stream. Today's topic is using data to drive real-time insights, something that's becoming increasingly important. And to do this, I will be joined today by Andreas Span, who is the Director and Business Unit Executive for Cognitive Solution Sales at IBM. Welcome, Andreas.
Thank you, Bernard. My pleasure.
It's really nice to have you with me. So um, today we're going to talk about the importance of data, especially real-time data, what this means in terms of some of the barriers, what organizations need to think about in terms of their technology stack, in terms of their skills, and so on. So, and hopefully we'll look at lots of examples of companies who've done this in practice and got some real business value out of this. You're joining us from Germany, right?
That's correct.
Very good. So where in Germany are you based at the moment?
I'm based between Stuttgart and Tübingen, where IBM's headquarters is practically in Germany. So I hold an geo role responsible for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. But in these pandemic times here, we are all kind of grounded lame ducks. So I'm conducting as much as possible of the business from my home office.
Very good. And home office, I'm intrigued. Before we go into the world of data and technology, I'm intrigued to see some of the swords in the background. Are they decorations or are they something you're using?
No, they are something that I'm using actually. They are custom forged because a proper sword needs to fit like a good suit. I've been practicing for many years, more than 40 years, and out of which some 25 odd years professionally, martial arts, particularly karate, and then the art of the sword, the Aido, which is still something which teaches me discipline and keeps me fit in the background.
Very good. Yeah, I did karate until I was about 18, and I loved it. Okay, so anyone joining us on the live stream, these sessions are, as always, they are for you. So engage with us, say hello. I'm just having a little look through, and people are basically joining us already from all over the world. We have someone from Vienna, from Atlanta, Georgia, from India, from Ghana. Um, so it's nice to see everyone on the stream from Chile, from Nairobi. Hi, Susan. Hi, Carolina. So say hello to us, but also engage, ask questions, agree, disagree with us. That makes it a much more interesting session. And anyone who ever wants to re-listen to these live streams, you can find them on my YouTube channel. And we will also turn each of these live sessions into a podcast episode, so you can always re-listen to any of these in your own time. Okay, so today's topic is data. And before we go into this, maybe you can give anyone listening to us here and watching us here a little more background about yourself, Andreas, what you do for IBM, and so people have a sense of what you do.
Absolutely, Bernard. So I'm with the company for more than 30 years. Meanwhile, in various international management positions. My latest one being in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, where I head for the systems division of IBM, power architecture, risk Unix architecture, where I'm leading all the work that we are doing together with SAP. And I've practically built a business unit on HANA, on Power, over the last 7 years from scratch, so to say, from zero, because in the early times it was an x86 turf solely, up to about 30% market share in less than 6 years since we have gone online with our solution.
Very good, very good. So a lot of experience, and you obviously work with lots of clients all across Europe, Middle East, and Asia. So this should be an interesting session, and hopefully you can share lots of insights with us. I'm just having a quick look through the stream, and we have literally people joining from everywhere. We have um, Yunus here from Portugal, with Victoria from Taiwan, Hussein from Saudi Arabia. We have Israel from Brazil. We've got Nirja from India in Delhi. We have Nada from New York. It's wonderful to see all of you on the stream here. In terms of data, then, why, from your perspective, why is data nowadays such an important business asset? Why has it become so important for every business?
Well, this is a question I could talk for hours about. It is pretty easy. Data is the new oil of our 21st century. This is at the core of the economic conveyor belt, which is practically circumventing the globe here. And wherever you touch something, you see the importance of data. For example, the first thing I read this morning was an IDC paper, on the importance of data, where they say data is at the core of the digital economy, but data without intelligence is just data, and so on and so on. So there is no digital economy, there is no proper interaction around the globe from a communication point of view, without data. And that's why, it's not only important to have data, because 80% of all of the data around this globe is unstructured and hence unusable. It is non-existent for somebody, because you first need to mine it, analyze it, and put it to work. So that's why data.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And anyone who's ever listened to anything I've said or written about knows that I'm super passionate about all of this. And for me, oil was maybe the resource of the previous industrial revolution. Data is definitely the resource of this fourth industrial revolution. And I hope it's actually even better than oil, because oil you use once, whereas for me data is almost like like soil that you can grow things out of, again and again and again, if you take care of it. So today's session is the focus is on real-time data in particular. Why is that important? And have you got any good examples of how organizations might want to use real-time data to really make a difference?
Right. If there is a difference between oil and data, in a half joking way, there has never been enough oil around, but there is always too much data around. So the question is, how you get to the essential bits in this data universe here, and then in a real time fashion, so that you can draw insights and then immediately turn them into action. I think one of the best examples of the importance of immediate insights comes with this pandemic. It's actually the way how we try to manage it, the way how we try to check it in. We have at all times to know where we are in the fight against this pandemic. What the spreading is, what the infection rate is, what the issues are around over there, what the incidence rates, what the death rates, etc. It's all data. So we've been bombarded since the advent of this pandemic from morning till evening with data. To give you another example, it is very, very crucial, to find a vaccine now and medicine to cure this. There obviously are gazillion of attempts around the globe to do this, but you have to analyze all of this data. You have to subtract the meaningful insight, and then you have to concentrate and further only those which promise something. We had a crucial intervention here as well with our Watson engines, our artificial intelligence, which has been practically siphoning down millions and millions of approaches to a handful, which then have been pursued by the research, and in the end have resulted in the first vaccines as well that we now see on the market. But have to imagine that as a funnel of immense data approaches which had to be churned in no time, practically not even in real time, to yield something. Usually takes years, if not decades, to develop a vaccine, and lo and behold, in a global concentrated effort, now we have it in a couple of months available here, which I think is also due to the way how we can handle data these days, how we can spread it, analyze it, and put it to work.
Very good. I'm just having a look through some of the questions, and people agreeing data is the new oil, especially data with intelligence. And here's a question in terms of shelf life, that data now has a shelf life, and how do we assess this? Do you have any views on that?
Yes. I'm afraid we have to extend all of this discussion, for a couple of hours, if not weeks, because it's really insightful questions as well. I'll answer with an insight into the development of data handling, and why I've built this business unit over here. So more than a decade ago, Hasso Plattner, the grounding father of SAP, and his then technical leader Vishal Sikka, came up with the idea of an in-memory database, something, the mother of all databases, as I'd like to call it, where you practically have all the data stored for immediate usage over there. At that time, they could not foresee, obviously, the exponential explosion of data, and therefore, so it could be handled with a commercial technology, x86 at its base, which is working by and large in many cases, but not necessarily for enterprise environments. And the background here is shelf data. So the life of data. How long can it be held in store? How long does it make sense to utilize it in the beginning? And when you practically initiated an investigation, by the time you had the data analyzed and churned on your desk, it was perimeted already. You could start anew. So the simple question, answer to the question would be, the lifetime of data is getting shorter and shorter these days. But on the other hand, because we live in an age where we actually do an accumulative approach to data, and then we jointly build on that data, we still need to have it in store somewhere, and that brings in data tiering, that brings in the data placement as such. So on one side, we need to store as much data as we can, but in different layers, so that we have the hot data, which is actually triggering our immediate action at our fingertips, and the less important data in terms of actionability in more remote storage areas, which can be accessed a little bit slower than the other one.
Yeah, very, very good points. And I think it's absolutely vital that organizations realize that that there is an increasing need to have real-time data to personalize services, for example. And even if you think about consumer data, in the past, data that was 5 years old, companies would be very happy to still use, but it was very limited data. Nowadays, consumer behaviors are shifting so quickly, and even I'm no longer the consumer I was 5 years ago. And if you then go to where we are today, what companies are now trying to do is exploit more of those micro moments. So if I want to sell someone travel insurance, and I can detect that this person is at the airport at this point in time, this is when I need to act on this data. And if I don't, if I wait another half an hour, the data is no longer relevant. And so this is, we're entering this new world. There was a question here from someone asking about, will there be a limit to the amount of data we will be able to collect in the world? So what, have you got a view on that? How
Um, yes, there is no
yeah,
there is no
Nicholas.
limit. I think the data output is growing exponentially in a fashion that we cannot even realize. Just take again, the pandemic as the last 10 months, how this has, driven digitization, how much data we produce every second around the globe. So it will continue to accumulate, to grow, to grow, to grow. And with this tendency, we need, the more to be specific and analyze it and just pinpoint the important data, the last data that we need, and therefore I think the rest of the data will kind of, I don't know how to put it in a nice poetic picture, will kind of flow, into an universal ocean of debris data, which will be there. Maybe, it will have some importance for generations and technologies to come, to mine some of the importance out of that old data. But generally, it is, like autumn, when the leaves fall and stack, or snow, and you always are interested in the surface of the data, in the most newest one, and then you need, to have, as much as possible, some insights into what you have stored over there, and then just forget, what you cannot master. It's very akin to the way our mind works. If we would practically remember everything that we ingest in data, we'd either be nuts or dead, probably. So the capacity to forget is the greatest blessing that the human race has.
Very good, yeah, and making sure that our brain pays attention to the data points that matter at this point in time is vital. In a conversation we had earlier in the week, you talked about that we're entering this third era of computing. Maybe you can go back to this and explain, because I thought it was quite interesting how you talked about the different eras of computing, and maybe describe this third era, and how you believe this is different, and how this is enabling some of the things we're talking about here.
Right. So it's my very own view on this topic. I consider, the advent of the computing area to be somewhere, in the post Second World War years, when we came up with the first big computers. IBM was, at that time, the spear point of this development. Big computers called ENIAC 1, ENIAC 2, which, encompassed several buildings and had less power than any mobile phone today, in comparison. And this went on practically in a enterprise, in a business-like computing, which, was reserved more or less to companies, to governmental entities, until the late 80s. And then we practically entered the next phase, which I would consider to be the age of the personalized computing, and that's, when the first laptops, the first notebooks, the first desktop computers, etc., came into usage, and they have been ever since revolutionizing our world for the last 30 years. Practically my entire career has been, to be an advocatus diaboli of this new technology. And now, in the last 2-3 years, we are entering a new era, where computing becomes pervasive. It is permeating everything. We speak today way beyond the Internet of Things. Where practically dumb bits of technology are empowered to communicate with each other, and where we have a global spanning set of assets and of communication ways, which are all based on computing. We have a digital economy. We talk about that every day. Digitization is taking over, and you will see the leap that we are doing again through the pandemic over here, which is acting like a catalyst. Education will be revolutionized. We will already see that. Homeschooling is the new topic, but it's beyond homeschooling. It's the way on practically being able independently to shape your own curriculum, to drive your own way, how you build up your education and how you expand your knowledge, because that will give you the keen edge of competitiveness in this new world here. So those are the three phases. So from the first phase, focused only on business, more or less business to business. The second one, personalized computing, and the third one, which I now see, is a pervasive computing, which is practically taking over our world. And here we are now coming in with new concepts like standardization, automation, and ultimately artificial intelligence, which is a new frontier we are tackling at the moment. Self-learning, self-augmenting artificial intelligence, which we want to harness for the benefit of humanity.
Very good. So when we're now talking about this, that we're talking about this third era of computing that is giving companies so many opportunities, where we have pervasive computing, where we have artificial intelligence, where we have real-time data. From the companies that you work with, from your customers, and all the conversations that you have with them, what are they seeing? What do you see as some of the key challenges that organizations need to overcome to actually make this a reality in their organization?
That's another very interesting question. Actually, this transformation is taking place on several layers. So on one side, it is the organizational challenge which we have, which has to do with the governance of companies, of countries, of institutions generally. With the topic of governance and organization, and then it's the technology challenges underlying that, which you need to master first. So when you speak today of driving all of this into the future, IT is not any longer sitting in the basement. It has come out. It is sitting at the C-level desk and has a clear saying over there. So on one side, you have to have technology which is performant enough, which can seamlessly grow, which very important in these days as well, can hold up from an economic point of view. So it needs to be subservient to the cash flow of a company and still support its development, and ultimately it needs to be open, so that you do not end into a deadlock here, either from a particular vendor, or a particular technology. So those are all the things that you need to handle on the technology side. And there, as I just mentioned, the next steps that we see is in development, and all that is coming in the next year. We need to chunk things down when we develop them, so containerization. We need to have them, communicating across all platforms, Kubernetes, OpenShift, all these sort of things. We have to automatize them, and then we need to standardize them. So these are the first challenges on a technology level, which we need to master. And once you have mastered those, and you hopefully have the right partners in doing that, who give you the technology basis and do not, fence you in. Then we come, to the development of the organizational bit, where they have, to change the customer relationship way of engaging, where you have practically, to build a new platform for everything, from HR management to procurement to, fulfillment to delivery. And this is what you see out there. That's why SAP, for example, has come up also with this enormous bet on their own future. They've doomed themselves to be successful with a new platform, which is HANA S4. So it's not only the database, where you want to have all the data residing in, but it is also the platform on which you churn and put this data to work. So those are the challenges. So if I put it from the point of view of how you build this in a stack, then you have to, at the very bottom, you have to consider the data placement. What sort of storage technologies to use, in simple words? And then you go a step up, you go to the compute platform, where you have to make a basic decision, on what sort of technology, on what sort of platform you plant all of this. And let me put in a caveat here. Cloud, for example, virtualization, all these things are always as good as the technology they reside upon. That's pretty simple. Then comes the cloud operations level. Then comes the cloud automation level, and ultimately the cloud management level. On the application layer. So you've got to have all of this stack really under control and really integrated, and best in an open, seamlessly growable fashion. So pretty much of the quadrature of the circle. So it's a challenge.
Okay, so I'd like to dive slightly deeper into the technology, but before we do this, I want to go back to some of the organizational challenges, because from lots of clients that I work with, what I see is that actually the organizational challenges are sometimes more difficult to address and overcome than some of the technological challenges. So from your experience, what do you see as some of the biggest organizational challenges? And do you have any examples of companies that have overcome them well and have created an environment in terms of leadership, in terms of culture, in terms of processes that actually enable them to move forward with their digital transformation and the use of data?
Yes. Let me start with an example, which is almost a statement of motherhood these days, because everybody knows it. It's ubiquitous. It is shaping our lives, particularly around Christmas now, and it's called Amazon. So what happened here is a very simple process. Once an innovative process in thinking. Jeff Bezos, was just a guy who was selling books, and then he decided that he wouldn't need a bookstore anymore, that he'd just do it out of some storage environment, and that was the beginning, of an unparalleled success story. So from here on, he first mastered the supply chain, which was one of the first challenges that he had to tackle with. Then he had to master, the logistics around that one. Then he had to master the IT supporting that. So as you know, Amazon today has a cloud division called AWS, which is grown out of necessity. So again, on one side, IBM were the guys, we did the R&D here, the thinking and the development of the cloud concept, and then along comes a guy, like Bezos with Amazon, and said, I can do some of these servers myself. I can package this myself, so, and out of this, a new derivative is AWS, which is now one of the hyperscalers, one of the big players in this environment. Then the next step, he is pulling more and more analytics into the data. Who is looking at what, who is buying what, what is the marketing that I'm driving behind it, what I'm getting bombarded with, in a steep challenge, like now when everybody's buying online. How do I cope with my logistics to catch up? Everybody wants his presents at Christmas under the tree, or the virtual tree at least, and that needs to be handled. So alone, on the topic of this one company, we can show how, within 30 years or less, I think it's less, it's 24 if I count correctly, something has come from nowhere, to a colossal aggregation of technology, but also of business reshaping sorts. So that's, for example, one of the examples, which.
Absolutely, and I completely agree. And anyone watching or listening who wants to learn a little bit more about Amazon, I just had a conversation with one of the executives last week, and you can now find this conversation on my YouTube channel, where we talk about how Amazon itself has gone through this digital transformation. Okay, let's get back to the conversation here and talk about the technology in a bit more detail. So you talked about the generic technology stack that you need to make this all work. What are some of the key decisions that people need to think about, that they need to go through when they think about their own technology stack, and what are maybe some of the advantages and disadvantages of the different technologies that might be part of your technology stack?
Well, I think the most important part in all of this transition is a planning and analysis phase, because you have to understand that you are not revolutionizing only a bit of your IT or the entire IT, but you have to realize that you are practically changing in the business transformation the entire setup. You are resetting the blueprint for the future of your company, corporation, or whatever technical commercial endeavor you are in. So that's the first most important phase. And once you have done that, then you have to analyze. We leave some of the philosophy aside. What business am I? What do I want to do, etc. Of course, you need to do that as well. I've seen many companies who don't know even that properly, because the environment is changing. The requirements are changing. The ways of consumptions are changing, and so. Ultimately are the responses which you have to bring up if you still want to be part of the game. So but assuming that you have done this bit, then you have to make up your mind on how do you want to do this, because there is another sad truth in all of this. The more complex, the more sophisticated and big the challenge becomes, the less you can handle it yourself. So in former times, many companies had little IT departments which because they were replicating stuff, were very well aware to and capable to run a business. Now that's getting more and more difficult. So we see trends towards aggregation, and we see trends towards putting all of this stuff away from you. So managed services are one of the next bigger considerations that you may want to have in this context. Have somebody who is managing all the stuff for you, taking all the complexity away, and then the trick is only to do that in a commercially palatable way. So you have to be in control of the costs. But that's the trend, and that is also something which is practically growing now again into the cloud direction. So cloud in its first steps, in its first years, was still a pretty shaky concept. Somebody was thinking there is a virtual world where you can play stuff, etc. But it had many issues, from data security to data retrievability to being resilient enough, being performant enough, etc., etc. Not to speak about the costs, which are still pretty high, because what people mostly forget to tell you is it's not only putting the data in the cloud, it is maintaining the communication between yourself and the data on a networking side, which eats up most of the resources in here. So once you have done those considerations, you want to think about what sort of platform am I doing this on. So coming back to what I said initially, SAP, for example, who is at the core of many of these considerations, started deploying their HANA concept on x86, a commercial environment. At that time, a seemingly at-hand decision, but it very quickly changed because the entire enterprise world, needing 7x24 sustainability for their business, needed something more resilient, something more business-like. So that's where another architecture came into play. The risk unique concept that we are utilizing here for many years in IBM, and which is together with our mainframe technology practically at the base of I don't know, the majority. I'm not venturing on a percentage these days, but on a majority of technologies which really need this 7x24 environment. So just small examples. Whenever you touch an ATM, try to do a financial transaction. In 99%, there is an IBM mainframe in the background running this. Whenever you look at very complex computation, whether it's weather forecasting or the simulation of an atomic explosion, or the development of a new vaccine or so on, it is most probably running on power, on a risk architecture, which through its parallelism has the highest rates here in the market. So these are some of the considerations that you need to take when you venture into the building of your new business. And we could go on again, for hours and hours. You see how complex this is, and you can also understand, why so many people are struggling. So also why, the evolution here is kind of jumpy, I would almost say. So the predictions are clearly linear and nice, and everybody thinks we need to get over there, and then something happens, and the disruption is practically taking us forward. Upheaval is the name of the new market churn here. I just looked this morning at the study that we have commissioned on what the technologies are which are driving revenues these days. So in the last 7 months, they have shifted dramatically. So number one was advanced analytics, has gone a little bit down. Number two was mobile, has jumped onto number one in preference. Number three. Number four was robotic process automation, has gone down. So the three top ones now, coming from the bottom more or less, are mobile, artificial intelligence, and cloud. So these are the three trends which are now shaping the digital transformation and generally speaking the business transformation that we see, for obvious reasons which we already tackled.
Very good. In a minute, I want to talk about some of your favorite examples to bring this all to life, and maybe share with us some companies that have done all of this well, and maybe also get your view on the future and what you see as some of the trends on the horizon. But before we do this, I had a question here from Ali saying, can you discuss data privacy? And I was following the stream, and there were quite a few questions. Somebody saying, okay, this is all well and good having all of this data, but will people at some point realize that companies are collecting too much data about themselves, and there might be a backlash against all of this? Have you got a view on data privacy, Andreas?
Yes. Actually, it's a question which you cannot look upon into isolation. That is data privacy on one side, and it is data security on the other side. So again, concerning new news during these last couple of months. Cyber criminality has risen, steeply by about 70%. Just yesterday, I read that the European vaccine release center has been hacked, etc. So it is a threat, for our very own civilization, which is looming here on the horizon. So number one is, I think we need to be very, very careful and very restrictive on data security. And IBM, for example, has recognized it since a long time. It is one of our bees in the bonnet, to put it like that. So we are developing crypto technologies, by the drove, in order to keep up here with the menace outside. So that's one point. The next point is obviously then data privacy, which has two sides on it. One is, I would say, an ethical, moral one. We need to make up our minds as a society which data we want to share and which we want to store. And it's not so easy, because you see that also in daily discussions. On one side, let me go a step back. For example, the way why some of the countries around the globe, China, Taiwan, Singapore, have reined in and checked in the pandemics is because they are ruthless in the way how they impose, their data management and the ubiquity how they do it. So yes, you can have a clear way of checking all of this. If everybody really needs to use an app on his smartphone, and it can be tracked, and your whereabouts can be tracked. But what you are doing is you are sacrificing practically your privacy, for the sake of sanity over here. So that's one decision. We in the Western societies are struggling with this concept. Maybe in Germany mostly more than everywhere else, where we do not, want to do this. On the other side, the young generation is sharing their preferences, their hobbies, their free times, and what have you, very freely on Facebook or Snapchat or whatever is the newest kid on the block over here, without wasting a second about data privacy. So it is a balance, which on one side, we have to make our mind up on as a society how we want to do this, and once we have done that, we have to regulate this and have to put a governmental stamp on it, which is protecting our privacy. But that also entails the way how we do that. And so we have to be grown-ups. We have to be responsible on how we handle our data and how we practically part with it. And then the other side of it is the technology side. Is how do we handle it? How do we process it? How do we store it? We have clear rules. The GDPR rules in Europe are amongst the most advanced globally, and are being worked upon day by day.
Very good. Yeah, I completely agree. Privacy and security are absolutely vital when it comes to data, and what we are seeing at the moment is that technology is coming a really long way, where we can even store data and analyze data without sacrificing privacy, without sharing data. We can even analyze and use artificial intelligence across geographic regions, keeping the data in individual countries. So there are amazing things we can do now to actually make sure the data stays safe and protected. Um, so what are some of your favorite examples then of companies that have done this well? Maybe among some of your customers, where do you see the real time data HANA on Power? Who is using this well, and who is delivering real business results from this?
This has a little bit to do also with the adoption rate, which is different by vertical sectors, by industries practically. I think the first ones, to jump on this new digitization wave and ways of putting it to use was the retail industry, driven by the fierce competition which we see in the market these days. And for example, amongst them, one of the first ones to move is a Swiss retailer, also an official reference. Parenthesis, I mean, I could give you a gazillion of examples, but not all of them are official references or are, exactly I'm allowed to speak about. But let's focus on those which I can mention. Cope is one of them. So the circumspect Swiss, were some of the first to jump on this for many reasons. They could grow the business and they could adjust it to the fluctuation. Through consumption models, grow it, and then take it down again depending on what the peaks of their business were. They had a very fast way of provisioning new virtual environments which they needed for their business by putting analysis to work. They could adjust practically the filling of their shops with the adequate offerings within hours. So give you an example which computes several of these things. On one side you need a clear weather prediction. So if you know that the next 3 days will be brilliant sunshine, 30 degrees, everybody wants to go out. So what you would want to put in your stores is everything from sun lotion to bathing suits to ultimately beverages, whatever goes with this. You have to clearly know how much you need, where you need the stuff, and then you'll have to have it there in time. Practically an analysis like this is run in the evening. In the morning you want to have your shop stocked. So that's a simple example. And they've done that by utilizing, for example, power now here in comparison to an x86 platform which they used previously, which allowed them to increase their reaction time by more than 90%. And at the same time, they took down their needed hardware, their technology infrastructure to run all of this by about 80%, which has a lot of other implications. It is not only that you save money or headcount in order to run this, but it has also an environmental impact, which is getting more and more important these days. So it's less electricity consumptions, it's less heat production, cooling, water, whatever you have around over there, and it helps also through the artificial intelligence analysis, shape the buying behavior of the customers and drive them to more sustainable stuff, which you can also see is on the rising these days, and at the moment when we can lower the prices on these select sustainable products so that they are available for a broader base of buyers, then we will have the break even that we are seeking for, and that will be one of the accelerators to obtain our goals, to reduce heat, global warming and whatever.
Very good. Retail obviously has been running this technology for a while. Do you have other examples from maybe
Sure.
another industry vertical where you see some traction?
Yeah, next one would be automotive.
Mm.
So we all see that the fierce battle which is now taking place in the automotive sector, the switch to electronic cars or any other alternative fuel that we can imagine. But in any case, the writing is on the wall for the traditional engines, and I think it's just a matter of a couple of years, until they will vanish, from the surface. So a company like Bosch, who is one of the global supporters and suppliers for the automotive agency was one of the first to jump on this technology. Again, they have the most complex virtual private cloud setup, and they adapt to the stringency of fast development, lower costs, and ultimately, faster response to all of these challenges by running such a sophisticated system in the fashion that we mentioned before.
And what are they using it for?
They are using it for development. They are using it for their entire supply chain. They are using it for fulfillment. They are using it for production, automatization. So practically, it's at the core of their entire business at the moment, and growing.
Very good. Fascinating examples. Anyone listening and watching us live, feel free to share your comments. Let us know if you have any specific questions for Andreas, and also let us know what you think about this session. It's always great to get your feedback. Um, what I would like to know is what you see in the future. So if I ask you about some of your predictions, the trends that you see on the horizon, how you see the world is going to change over the next few years, the role of technology, data, real-time analysis, and so on in the future, what will be some of your key predictions?
So, as I said, the nature of what we are doing in knowledge and in technology development is cumulative and additive, and this is something which I see continuing in the future. So the more brains we put to the business, the more insights we will have, the quicker we will get to the next step. And this is probably going to reshape the entire way how we work, think, and act in the future. From a very environmental level, where I have no doubt that we will see a trend change in the future here, once we overcome the individual interests of one or the other how should we put it, group of interests, like the guys who are selling fossil fuel, etc., etc. But at the moment, there will be a break point, when it's not economic anymore, and then they will drop it and help, build a new sustainable environment. Because it's not the globe that has a problem; it's our society, that has a problem. So we'd better do it quickly. The way how we drive education will be different. The way how we interact will be different. These trends which I just named, no doubt, mobile is going to be a way how we do almost everything. Just look at the way how we are handling smartphones. 10 years ago they were not existing, and now we do almost everything, from our running our mail, our bank accounts, communicating, everything. So then the way how artificial intelligence will penetrate everything in the near future. It's still pretty much an academic exercise and driven by the academic environments, but it will shortly jump into the mainstream. And then it has to do with the way how we conduct computing. Cloud is no doubt one of the trends which will be successful. Probably not in we are still too stringent on private cloud or public cloud, or the name of the future is multiple clouds, so a hybrid cloud environment, and there might perfectly be reasons, for one or the other company to maintain their mission critical data on site, and then utilize the cloud as an expansion model over here. That goes hand in hand with privacy, data security, and the topics that we touched already. One of the big challenges will be to bring all this advance in technology and its capabilities to everybody. That's the social aspect of it, and I guess that it will be a responsibility. Company like IBM does this, because it's part of our DNA again from day number one, where we want to share this, where we want to make sure that the scissors is not, getting broader and broader, the gap in there between, those who have access to technology and those who do not, because that's a danger looming at the horizon as well. And I think it is a civic duty for everybody, to make sure that technology is put to the advance of mankind.
Very good. Yeah. There's one question that relates from Ingo here that relates to, you talked about the importance of sustainability as a major trend. So he's asking, what are your views on the sustainability and reduction of carbon footprints when it comes to storing and using data? Do you have any views on that?
Not sure how I'm to take the question, so is he meaning that the onslaught of data which we have, the very storage of it would already increase the carbon footprint?
I think this is the question. Yeah, how do we reduce it, and how do we treat data as an asset that also generates carbon? Because if we're storing data somewhere, if we're processing it, that has to be done in a data center that needs electricity, that needs cooling.
True enough. True enough. I mean, we just see it, as a simple example now with the onslaught of the streaming activities. Everybody sitting at home, is running on their smartphones on everything. Video streams, what have you. Enormous amounts of data being churned and transmitted. I think this will be a challenge. The first approach that we need to do over here is to make sure that we continue on this data tiering initiative, which I mentioned, to maintain only the hot data in immediate vicinity practically, and then some of the other stuff you can even put on tape, if you just need it seldom. And besides that, it also has to do with the way on, I think, how we shape data usage. We need to be more circumspect and really store only the relevant data and the delta which is being produced from one storage process to the other, and make sure that we don't overdo it and store too much data. And the next point in this will be cleaning it up, because as I said, that I think in the first sentence that I said, 80% of the data is unstructured, hence unusable. So we produce it with a lot of energy and work, and then we store it with a lot of energy, and then we don't know what the heck to do with it, because we don't know where to grab it. It's just an amorphous mass. So that's another one. We need to get clarity in this one, and again. I think self-learning, augmentative and artificial intelligence will help in this data mining process, and then the analysis as well, and then we can put away with unneeded data. But it's an ongoing process and a challenge in the industry.
Yeah, I agree. And what I'm seeing in practice is that for efficiency of these data storage systems, especially the larger cloud storage systems, is getting better and better all the time. Many of the companies and vendors that I work with are now moving to a completely carbon neutral environment where they're actually saying storing data in the cloud will make it carbon neutral and will make it much better for the environment than having your own data center that you can't optimize. And then we're using things like artificial intelligence, as you just said, Andreas, to hopefully identify the data that we actually need, but also improve the efficiencies of our processes, make sure that the data is analyzed in the most efficient way, and so on. That then reduces the electricity need and the ultimate carbon impact of all of this.
Absolutely.
Very good. This was a fascinating competition. We are now at the end of our hour. This was really enjoyable. Thank you very much, Andreas, for joining us and sharing with us some of the your insights around the need for real time data. Anyone, as I said, who wants to re-listen to this conversation or any of my other conversations, go to my YouTube channel where you can find hundreds of conversations, and or you can subscribe to my podcast where you can listen to each of these conversations in your own time, in your own space. Thank you very much. As always, stay safe, everyone, and thank you to Andreas.
Thank you for listening and giving us your precious time. And you can also communicate with me or Bernard on LinkedIn or any other means of electronic engagement that we have these days. Thank
Perfect. Yes, very good point. Make sure you connect with Andreas on LinkedIn. Thank you very much.